Welcome to Module 5, Lesson 1, Dividing Whole Numbers. Today we're going to work on fluently dividing multi-digit numbers using the standard algorithm. Fluently meaning that you can do it without sitting and struggling in different spots and continuously getting the correct answer. Right? So this might be review for some of you. For some of you, this might be a good little refresher and a good helping point with long division. So first and foremost, we're going to talk about estimating quotients. We talk a lot about knowing whether or not your answer is reasonable, and estimating helps you realize whether or not your answer is reasonable. So we're going to take this word problem. A local zoo had a total of 98,464 visitors last year. The zoo was open every day except for 3 holidays. On average, about how many visitors did the zoo have each day? Now, a couple of things. First of all, we want to know, so we have to highlight the question, on average, about how many visitors did the zoo have each day? Keywords, about. About tells you that you want to estimate. Okay, it's important to know that they had 98,464 visitors in the last year and that it was open every day except for 3 holidays. Well, that's going to be our number of days that it was open. Okay, so to estimate the average number of visitors per day, we're going to divide the total number of visitors by the number of days. Then that's how to find the average, but then to estimate, you're going to estimate the dividend by rounding, and then you'll also estimate the number of days. First and foremost, we're going to work with the dividend. So the dividend is what is being divided. So the number of people that we had is what's being divided. That's the dividend. And so we're going to round it to the nearest 10,000. So the nearest 10,000 would be the 9, my goodness, and then the 8 and everything after it goes in the box. The 8 tells the 9 to round up. So it rounds up to a 10, which means it is 100,000. Okay, so we rounded and we have the 98,000 is rounded to 100,000 people. Then we know that we're going to work with the divisor. We know that there are 365 days in a year, but it was closed on 3 of those days because they were holidays. So if it was 365 days in a year and it was closed for 3 days, we have to subtract 3. So we know the zoo was open for 362 days. We're going to estimate the divisor by rounding the number of days the zoo was open to the nearest 100. So you're always rounding to your largest place value. So in this case, the 3 is is the place value we're rounding to, or is in the place value we're rounding to. The 6 tells the 3 to round up to a 4. So 362 is rounded to the nearest 100 at 400. So then now we're going to estimate the quotient by taking our estimated or rounded numbers of 100,000 and dividing that by 400. And we can determine, okay, so here you can actually, so every 0 in the divisor cancels out a 0 in the dividend. So we're actually doing 1,000 divided by 4. And when I do that, I can use long division, but when I do that, I get 250. Okay, so on average, there were 250 visitors per day. About 250. So this isn't an exact answer, it's an estimate. Okay, so then if I were to do this and actually find the answer, doing 98,464 divided by the 362, it should be somewhere around 250. Okay, so how can we check that our quotients are correct? What I can do is so not with estimation, we're not checking to see if it is reasonable, we're checking to see if it's correct, so we can check our answers. So to do that, sorry, let me get a font here that you can actually read. There we go. You would multiply the divisor and the quotient to see if you get the dividend. If you get the dividend, that means that your answer is correct. If your product is equal to the dividend, then your answer is correct. If not, we need to try again. Okay, so basically what this is saying is if you're trying to figure out if 15 divided by 3 really is 5, then you would take 5, multiply it by 3, and make sure that you get 15. If you do, then you know that you're correct. If you don't, you need to try again. So now we want to know, do we think that our estimate is greater than or less than the actual answer? Explain. Well, let's think about what happened when we estimated. So when we estimated, the number of people went up and the number of days went up. Okay? So since the divisor was rounded up, we're saying there were actually more days than there were, which means the number of people would go down. So my guess would be less than, because our divisor was rounded up. So the number of people that could be put into each day got smaller because the number of days got bigger. So basically what you're saying is if your number of groups gets bigger, then what's going to happen is the amount that can go in each group is going to get smaller. Think about it. If you have 10 people and you put 10 people into 2 groups, that group can have 5 people. But if you have 10 people and you put them into 5 groups, those groups can only have 2 people. So the larger the number of groups, the smaller the number of people or things in the group. All right, and then our review in terms of long division. I like to tell students to remember the sentence, dirty monkeys smell bad. Divide, multiply, subtract, bring down. Okay, so we take a look and we put our dividend goes inside, always dividend on the inside, divisor is always on the outside. Okay, so 98,464 is on the inside and 362 is on the outside. Here we have to be really careful with where we place our numbers, especially since we're going to move on to decimal division. 362 cannot go into 9, so I usually put an X there, meaning I can't put part of my quotient there. 362 cannot go into 8, so I'm going to put an X there. 362 can go into 984, so here is where I'm going to start with my quotient. Now, if I do the math, I figure out that 362 can go into 984 2 times. So that's my division. Now I am going to multiply. When I multiply, I get 724. Then I'm going to subtract the 724 from the 984, and I get 260. So basically what this means is I have 98,464 pieces. Right now I'm only working with 984. How many groups of 362 can I make with those 984 pieces? I can make 2 groups. When I make those 2 groups, I use 724 pieces. Once I use those 724 pieces, I have 260 left over. But I'm not done. So the next step is to bring down the next number. So now we're going to start looking at the 6. So now I have I'm looking at 2,606 pieces. Okay, with the 2,606 pieces, I have to think how many groups of 362 can I make? Well, I don't know off the top of my head. I know here it says 7, but since I don't know, it's a pretty large number, so I'm going to go ahead and say, all right, well, let's try 5. We can just guess numbers that'll work. Or you can say, okay, well, how many times it took us 2 times to get close to 984, so it's going to be more than 3. And if I double 984, that's going to give me right around 2,000, so I know that it could be 4, so I could try 4. And when I do that, 2 times 4 is 8, 6 times 4 is 24, carry the 2, 3 times 4 is 12, plus 2 is 14. That is too small. If I had done it and I actually did the divide, multiply, subtract, bring down, and I subtract, if when I subtract my answer is larger than my divisor, that means that my number within my quotient is incorrect. So here, when I subtract, 16 minus 8 is 8. I borrowed, so 9 minus 4 is 5. 5 minus 4 is 1, and 2 minus 1 is 1. This is way bigger than 362, which means that I can make more groups. Okay, so then we kind of can keep estimating and doing math off to the side until we find our answer. In this case, the answer is 7. I can make 7 groups. When I do that, I get 2,534. So divide, multiply, subtract is now my next step. So I can go ahead and delete that box so you can see. And I get 2,534. When I subtract, I get 72. But then again, I have to bring down the next number being a 4. So now I bring that 4 all the way down. The most common mistake that many students make is they say, okay, well, 362 can't go into 72, so they add a 0 up here. So they end up with 20702. No, you do not look at how many times it can go into this number until you bring down the next one. So it's not how many times can it go into 72, it's how many times can it go into 724. Follow your steps. Divide, multiply, subtract, bring down. You cannot go back to the divide until you bring down that next number. So here we have 724. Well, from before, I know that 362 times 2 gives me 724. So in that case, I know that it goes into it 2 times. I get 724. When I subtract, I get 0. So then I know my answer tells me the average number of people at the zoo each day was 272 people. Again, your answer has to be in the form of a sentence because when you're doing word problems, you have to show that you understand what you were finding and how you found it. You can't just say 272 because that does not tell me that you understand the context of the problem. That tells me you can do the math, but it doesn't tell me if you can apply. All right, so what I would like you to do is I would like you to please try these 2 problems on your own. When you come back, we will check your answers. All right, so the divisor goes on the outside, so 321, and on the inside is 34,989. Okay, and I know it can't go into 3, it can't go into 4, but it can go into 349, and it's only going to do that once. So 1 times 321 is 321. I subtract, 9 minus 1 is 8, 4 minus 2 is 2. I bring down the 8. Now, can 321 go into 288? No, it can't. So now I do put a 0 because I brought down, and I cannot make a group of 321 with only 288 pieces. So now I subtract 0, and I get 288, but then I bring down the 9. So now how many groups of 321 can I make with 2,889 pieces? Well, what I like to do is I like to start with my last number. What times 1 gives me 9? Well, 9. Let's give it a shot. 321 times 9. 9 times 1 is 9. 2 times 9 is 18. Carry the 1. 3 times 9 is 27 plus 1 is 28. So it works out perfectly. If I were to look at that and say, okay, 9, but this was only like 129, then I know that it would be too big. You have to kind of use some logic in these problems. All right, so then this is 9. I know that 321 times 9 is 2,889, and I get 0. So my answer here was 109. 125 goes on the outside. 73,375 goes on the inside. 125 can't go into 7, it can't go into 3, but it can go into 733, and it can go into it 5 times. 125 times 5, well, 5 times 5 is 25, carry the 2. 2 times 5 is 10, plus 2 is 12, carry 1. 1 times 5 is 5, plus 1 is 6. Okay, when I subtract, I can't do 3 minus 5, so I borrow from the 3. It becomes a 2. I get 13. 13 minus 5 is 8. 2 minus 2 is 0. 7 minus 6 is 1. Since this number here is smaller than 125, I know that my 5 is correct. How many times can 125 go into 108? No, I forgot to bring down. So now I bring down the 7. So how many times can 125 go into 1,087? That would be 8. 8 times 5 is 40. 2 times 8 is 16, plus 4 is 20. 1 times 8 is 8, plus 2 is 10. So that is 1,000. And I'm left with 87. Bring down the 5. How many groups of 125 can I make with 875 pieces? Well, that would be 7. 7 times 5 is 35. Carry the 3. 2 times 7 is 14, plus 3 is 17. Carry the 1. 1 times 7 is 7, plus 1 is 8. Look at that. I end up with 0. So my answer here should be 587. Okay, now dividing with a remainder. Your process is exactly the same. So you're still going through and saying, okay, it can't go into 1, but it can go into 18, so on and so forth. Okay, so in this case, since I have 2 left over, right now, we say that it is a remainder of 2. With fractions, we would say 154 with 2 left over out of 12. Okay? When we divide with decimals, this will change a little bit, but for now, we're just talking about the remainders and what they mean. So in this case, we have Callie who has 1,850 books. She must pack the boxes to ship to a bookstore. Each box holds 12 books. How many boxes will she need? Well, let's think about this. The answer here when we divided was 154 remainder of 2. So this tells me that I need 154 boxes because if 12 go in each box, we can use 154 boxes, but then we're going to have 2 books left over. Okay, so what does the remainder mean in this situation? The remainder of 2 means that when I pack the books into the, how many was it? 154 boxes, that I will have 2 books that were not packed. So it's not that I have 2 boxes left over, it's that I have 2 books left over that weren't packed. So how many boxes does Callie need to pack for the books? Well, if she packs 154, will she send all of the books? In this case, based on what the remainder said, no. So Callie will have to pack 155 boxes in order to get the last 2 books shipped. Since packing 154 boxes will leave her with 2 books unboxed. All right, so now we're going to go through and we're going to divide. And I will tell you, you should end up with a remainder. And I want you again to try these on your own. When you come back, we'll check your answer. Again, the divisor goes on the outside. Guess I need my pen here. So that's 25. On the inside goes the dividend, which is 5,796. 25 cannot go into 5, but it can go into 57, and it goes in twice. Minus 50 is 7. Bring down the 9. 25 goes into 79 3 times, which is 75. I am left with 4. Bring down the 6. Well, 25 can go into 46 only one time. So I subtract and I get 21. So in this case, I should have gotten 231, remainder 21. Okay, and then here I'm just going to go ahead and show you the math. 7 on the inside, 3,098. I'm sorry, 67 on the outside, 3,098 on the inside. 67 can't go into 3, it can't go into 30, but it can go into 309. It goes in 4 times. 4 times 7, 28. So that's 30. Ooh, look at that. That's pretty close. But here, now I only have 18. Well, 67 can't go into 18. I made a mistake. 67 times 4 is 28. Carry the 2. 6 times 4 is, it's 24, so I get 26. My goodness, this is why we double check our work and our math. Oh, man. Good thing I have an eraser. So I have 268. There we go. 9 minus 8 is 1. 10 minus 6 is 4. And then this is 2 minus 2. So now it's 418. That goes in 6 times. 6 times 7 is 42. Carry the 4. 6 times 6 is 36. Plus 4 is actually 40 this time. There we go. 8 minus 2 is 6. 1 minus 0 is 1. So in this case, the answer was 46 with a remainder of 16. Okay, so in this case, you should have found that 1,578 was important. 15 rocks in each bag. The question should have been highlighted. How many complete bags can be filled? And then there were 2 questions, so I'm going to do 2 colors. How many rocks will be left over? Okay, well, the leftover, let's think about this. How many will be left over? Well, isn't that going to be a remainder? Isn't that what remainder means? Left over? So in this case, I'm taking the 1,578. I'm dividing it by 15. 15 goes into 15 once. I get 0 and I bring down the 7. It goes into 7 0 times. Minus 0, I get 7. I bring down the 8 and it can go into 78. 5 times. 5 times 15 is 75. And I'm left with 3. So he can pack 105 bags and 3 are left over. All right, like I said, this is kind of a review. So what I would like you to do is I would like you to please go and do the guided practice. Okay. Don't know why it's not allowing me to go to the next page right now, but your next page is the guided practice. You have some problems here to work through. Maybe it's on, there we go, there it is. I am going to have you do number 1, and then numbers 2, 3, and 4, do them, but they're not going to be on the online guided practice, but 5 through 14 will be. As always, if you have any questions, please be sure to write them down or email me so we can go over them in class.